Hi, I'm Ms. Hall, and this is Lesson 93, Observational Study versus Experiment. We'll begin by identifying sampling methods in statistical studies. The steps in a typical statistical study are shown below. Identify the variable of interest and the population of the study. Choose a sample that is representative of the population. Collect data. Organize and describe the data using a statistic. Interpret the data, make inferences and draw conclusions about the population. There are many different ways of sampling a population, but a random sample is preferred because it is most likely to be representative of a population. In a random sample, each member of a population has an equal chance of being selected. The other types of samples given below are defined by methods used to select members. Each sampling method has its advantages and disadvantages. Here are some types of samples. For a self-selected sample, members of a population can volunteer to be in the sample. For a systematic sample, a rule is used to select members of a population, for instance, every other person. For a stratified sample, a population is divided into smaller groups that share a similar characteristic. A sample is then randomly selected from each group. For a cluster sample, a population is divided into groups called clusters. All of the members in one or more of the clusters are selected. For a convenience sample, only one member of a population who are easy to reach are selected. You can see on the right, I have example 1. We're going to identify types of samples. I have an example of each of these 5 types of samples. You want to determine whether students in your school like the design of the school's website, the new design. Identify the type of sample described. You mail questionnaires and use only the questionnaires that are returned. This is a self-selected sample. Only students that opt to fill in the survey are being sampled. For B, you list all the students alphabetically and choose every 6th student. This is a systematic sample. C, your school randomly selects 2 students from each classroom. That is a stratified sample. Stratified sample. D, you ask all the students in your algebra class. That is a convenience sample. There's no way I'm going to spell that right without looking. Okay, so in that sample, there was only one they didn't get an example of, and that is the cluster sample, which is why I included the extra example. The principal asked students at one lunch table about the quality of food served in the school's cafeteria. This is a cluster sample. On to methods of collecting data. An experiment imposes a treatment on individuals in order to collect data on their responses to the treatment. The treatment may be a medical treatment, or it can be any action that might affect a variable in the experiment, such as adding methanol to gasoline and then measuring its effect on fuel efficiency. In an experiment, you typically have a control group and the experiment group. The experiment group is the one receiving the intervention, whatever that may be. So you're going to be tipped off that it's an experiment if you have like 2 groups. And there is a control group that does not get whatever intervention is being measured. An observational study observes individuals and measures variables without controlling the individuals or their environment. This type of study is used when it is difficult to control or isolate the variable being studied, or when it may be unethical to subject people to a certain treatment or to withhold it from them. For observational study, I think about medical conditions, like you want to study people that have asthma, and it doesn't make sense for you to somehow make a random assortment of people have asthma. No, you just take from a group that has asthma and you study them. That's what I think when I think of unethical. Or you study people in particular home situations. You wouldn't want to impose that on people. This one reminds me of like, you want to study people with like a medical condition, for example, but not always. That's just an example. A survey is an investigation of one or more characteristics of a population. In a survey, every member of a sample is asked one or more questions. One example of a survey is a census. And a census is a very particular survey because a census asks everyone in the population to respond. For example, in the U.S., the Census Bureau conducts a census every 10 years. So every 10 years, they get information from the entire population of the U.S. So not often is a census used, but a census is an example of a survey. Finally, a simulation uses a model to reproduce the conditions of a situation or process so that the simulated outcomes closely match the real-world outcomes. Simulations allow you to study situations that are impractical or dangerous to create in real life. Simulations, I think of having a computer involved that is going to run a bunch of simulations. Example 4. Identify the method of data collection each situation describes. A researcher records whether people at a gas station use hand sanitizer. This is an example of an observational study. You are watching, I have no idea if I spelled study with an extra start of a Y. Okay. This is an observational study where you observe individuals and what they do. You don't impose them to do a certain thing. B. A landscaper fertilizes 20 lawns with a regular fertilizer mix and 20 lawns with a new organic fertilizer mix. The landscaper then compares the lawns after 10 weeks and determines which fertilizer is better. This is an experiment. I mean, there are two groups getting two different interventions, and then we're comparing the results.